right, everybody, welcome to episode 18 of Comedically Hardheaded, and welcome to the finale of the Howard University series. This is part 2 of the senior year. So where we left off, I was failing 2 classes. I wasn't quite sure exactly what was going to happen after I graduated because now it was a gray area, so me and my mother were beefing. I was still roaming around town laying it down. The country was still at the peak of the recession, which made it even more scary as far as graduating, and it was finally sinking in that, okay, we are almost at the end of this Howard chapter, and life is really about to kick in. At this point, it's now January of 2010. So let's begin. So around this time, for some strange reason, Bossman automatically starts to think that I just think the worst of him, and for some reason he swears that anytime something bad happens in the dorm, I have something to do with it, or I'm somehow responsible. So there's a small series of many little tiny incidents that happen, and I get blamed for all of them. And it could be something petty like somebody defaced one of the bulletin boards he made, and he'd be like, "Michael, why must you do such things?" And I'm like, huh? I didn't do that. And then there was another situation where somebody had wrote something, and they had put his name was like, blank is and they called him all kind of names, and of course I got blamed for it. I'm like, what? I didn't do it. Well, first of all, I had enough going on. Bossman was just always entertaining to me. I never had a personal vendetta against Bossman. Bossman was just very entertaining to me, and there was a lot. It was a lot to work under. It was a lot, but there was never any disdain or anything. So I was really confused with that aspect. And then where it got worse is all of the floors had a master key. So if you remember in the junior year episode, I told you about how we snuck into my friend Tanae May's room and stole like one of the things out of her room and held it hostage. This little stuffed animal that she was obsessed with. So all the floors had a master key where you could get into each room on the floor. Bossman stayed on the second floor, and for some reason, the master key to the second floor was missing. So out of nowhere, he goes on this tangent where he thinks one of us 14 RAs or the 3 GAs, one of us are out to get him. This is true though, this is so crazy. People are like, are you serious? Yeah, I'm very serious. So he thought one of us were out to get him, myself included. And so he starts roaming around the dorm and is letting everybody know, I will fire whoever tries to double cross me. We're like, what? Okay. And I want you all to know I sleep with a knife under my pillow. I'm like, ain't nobody going in your room to try to kill you, man. Listen, as high as tuition is, you think I'm about to mess it up trying to kill somebody or break into your apartment? We already did that and got the cupcakes last year. If you remember the episode where we had to go in and get the cooking supplies. And so there were all these crazy things that happened. And then right in the middle of all this comes Snowmageddon. And Snowmageddon was an interesting time because out of nowhere, we just get this influx of snow. I mean, just snow upon, it was like 2.5 different little blizzards hit at the same time, back to back. And so DC at the time was covered in a few feet of snow. I can't remember how many feet it was, but I know the storm had hit once already, and then there was another one that came, and we were at least under 2 or 3 feet of snow. And so pretty much the whole city is shut down. Campus is pretty much shut down. All the classes are, on delay or canceled. And being in Meridian, we are now stuck in our dorm. And there's no way to get to campus, so students that were on a meal plan and needed to get to campus to eat, there's no way to get there because the shuttles are no longer running. And, pretty much the staff at the caf, half of them are not coming in, and so there's limited service available when it comes to food and everything. And so if you were someone like me, I wasn't on the meal plan. I would just go grocery shopping at the Harris Teeter and have a little groceries here and there and everything like that. And so the first order of business that we had to do as resident assistants was to make sure that every resident had adequate food. And so Sodexo started bringing food to the dorm specifically, like they started delivering it, all right? And pretty much the only options they had were sandwiches, okay? So this was like some Fire Fest type mess where they had them sandwiches in the styrofoam boxes. Only our sandwiches were a lot better. And so we have to get into this kind of sandwich distribution team, which was straight chaos. So you have 800 people in this dorm, and at least 300 of them have no food in their room. At least 300 of them have not bought any supplies. They have not gone and paid attention to the news where they said rack up on food, and a lot of it has to also do with the fact that people were depending on their meal plans and everything else like that. And so we had to, figure out how to feed 300 plus people every time these sandwich deliveries came in. And when I tell you, this was the most annoying thing to do, because there's nothing worse than doing something for other people and they're not really appreciative. That crap was working my nerves, because the issue was this. They gave a plethora of different kind of sandwiches, but it was kind of a first come, first served basis. So if you were one of the early people who actually came and got something when we first announced, hey, there's food downstairs, come and get some, then, you had a selection. You could get turkey, you could get ham, you could get roast beef, you could get salami, you could get vegetarian, you could get tuna, you could all kind of stuff. But them ones that waited 2 and 3 and 4 hours, and then there was nothing left but roast beef and tuna. I mean, oh, I don't eat that. Y'all ain't got nothing else. What you mean y'all ain't got no ham? And you're sitting here like, listen. First of all, one, we weren't even obligated to feed anybody because at the end of the day, everybody in there was grown. And we weren't snowed in like we couldn't get out the door. You could still go out and you could still go to the grocery store. You could still get around and eat. However, we just wanted to make sure, or at least the university at the time wanted to make sure that, there were food options available so nobody could say that they were starved while they were kind of snowed in for these few days that, the snow was packing up. And so that was a little annoying. You're trying to, give everybody the food and they're all unappreciative. And it didn't help that they kept bringing them same sandwiches every day for like 3 or 4 days. It's like, okay, I'm tired of the sandwiches and I'm not even eating them. But the most Howard-esque part about Snowmageddon was that it pretty much turned into a full week of partying in that dorm. Since we were all snowed in and since classes had been canceled for pretty much the whole week, it just turned into a party throughout the whole building every night. And the most interesting part was that Howard had a few DJs that stayed in Meridian. Like, we had 3 or 4 DJs that stayed in Meridian, and the main DJ that everybody knew was DJ Chubb. He was really popular with the class of 2012 and 2013, which were the 2 classes that were staying in Meridian outside of us resident assistants who were, class of 2010 and 2011. And so pretty much every night after about 7 or 8 p.m., Chubb would set up all that DJ equipment, and then this big lobby we had where we also held the pageant for the dorm, it would just turn into a club, literally. And so now you have people who don't even live in Meridian, who live on the other side of campus, trucking it through the snow, walking 8 and 9 blocks just to get Meridian because everybody knew Meridian was the place to be during that week. It was just a straight party zone, and Boss Man let it happen. So everybody and their mom was in Meridian. Meridian turned into a club the whole week. Like every night after about 8 p.m., that music cranked at least until midnight and sometimes 1 o'clock. And to be honest, the RAs, we were in there partying down too. So it was a lot of fun. That was one good memory. But this is where the story turns and becomes awkward. At the same time, it's also Super Bowl weekend. And this year, it was the Colts and the Saints playing, and everybody and their mom was cheering for the Saints. And New Orleans already had a special place in the hearts of many people on campus because, one, everybody knew, like, if you went to the Latex party, the music that was most jumping was going to be from Louisiana. The Latex parties were just the Louisiana State Club and the Texas State Club would collaborate and host this big giant party and call it Latex, like the LA and the TEX put it together, Latex. My lane behind, because I was in the Washington State Club, I was like, well, why don't we do something similar? Let's get together with the California State Club and have the car wash. Never quite happened. They thought I was stupid with that. But anyway, in addition to that, after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of students who attended Xavier were invited to come and finish their studies at Howard while Xavier figured out exactly what they wanted to do as far as the damage they had to their campus after the hurricane. So New Orleans already had like a special connection with everybody. Plus, it was kind of like, you gonna cheer for the Black City anyway. You cheer for your own. And so, no disrespect to those from Indianapolis, much respect to y'all, but everybody was rooting for New Orleans that year. And so, they're having a big watch party in the same place where they had been having the parties all week. Now, this is where things get kind of weird. So, out of nowhere, Boss Man invites some random guy to start living in the dorm. This is not anybody that's a student. It's just somebody Boss Man met along the way. I don't know the origins of what happened. I just know all of a sudden this person was living in the dorm. This person was named Z. And literally, that was the name, just Z. I was like, okay. And so Z was a character. Remember that for later. But anyway, so the Super Bowl watch party's going on. Everybody's watching the game. Everybody's turned up and everything like that. And so Boss Man is feeling good, and he's hanging with his friends and stuff like that as well. And then I was in what you would call the TV room, which was adjacent to the main lobby where everybody was watching the game. So it was like this glass door, and you could still see everybody watching the game in that room. So you had an option. You could watch the game in the TV room that we were in, or you could watch it in the big lobby with everybody else. And so the game wraps up. Of course, the Saints win. It's a big, big party. The DJ comes right back out, starts cranking the music, and at the same time, listen, my guilty pleasure is the movie Set It Off. Anytime Set It Off is on, I will sit and watch the whole thing every freaking time. F. Gary Gray directed the hell out of that movie. And so a few of us are watching Set It Off in the TV room, and then, of course, in the bigger lobby, everybody's partying. And I mean, they're partying hard with the music and everything. And so the movie's on. Boss Man keeps coming in the TV room and trying to bring the party into the TV room. And I'm like, nah, man, we watching Set It Off. Like, yeah, and plus it's like, I'll be out there in a minute. Y'all gonna party till 2 o'clock anyway. It's only like 10 or 11. So I'll be out there in a minute after my movie goes off. And so Boss Man keeps coming out there and keeps coming into the room and opening the door and woo, yeah, I'm like, all right, man, all right. And so Ted May's like, you know what, Michael, lock the door. And so I go and I lock the door so he can't come in anymore. And at the same time, between you and I, Boss Man was drunk. Like, boss man had I don't know what he had in his apartment, but he came down, he was twisted, so he was in a good mood. And so, I mean, he, like, when he kept coming in the room, he'd be trying to dance all on the furniture and tell everybody to come in the room. I'm like, y'all, mind you, this is the boss, you know what I mean? And so, I didn't know how to receive this, because any other time we were getting cussed out when the residents were too loud and everything like that. And mind you, the party that they were having was a party that was allowed and permitted, which was cool. But I mean, it was just interesting to watch Boss Man go from one dynamic to the other, because there had been many times where he would call you at 1 or 2 in the morning if your floor was too loud and somebody had called and made a complaint. And now all of a sudden he's louder than the residents. I'm like, okay, whatever. So after we locked the door, we're watching Set It Off, and out of nowhere you just hear this out, boom! I'm like, huh? What was that? We looked, and we realized Bossman just walked into the door, because of course it was a door you could push open, and so he thought he could just push his way right in there and continue partying and cash money taking over for the 99 and the 2000, and no, he ran right into that glass, boom, hit his head so hard, we was like, oh, okay, and then he was like, open this door, and so, you know, the sucker that I am, I'm getting ready to go open the door, and Tanae's like, nah, don't open the door, he let him have his moment, he being stupid right now. I'm like, we can do that? She's like, yeah, just ignore him. I'm like, okay, and so, the funniest part is this. I'm sitting on the left side of the couch. Tanae is on the right side of the couch, and the door is to the right. And so, rather than Bossman say, Tanae, come open the door since she's the closest one sitting to it, or Rochelle, you come open the door because she's the next closest one sitting to it, or one of the few residents that were watching it on the floor, why don't y'all come open it since y'all are all close to it? He sees me way on the other side of the room. Michael, open this door. Michael, open this door. And I'm like, what am I getting yelled at for? Because of course this is that same era where for some reason anytime that anything went wrong, it was all my fault. And so Tanae's like, don't look at him, don't give eye contact, act like you can't hear him. And so I'm looking at that TV so hard and concentrating like I can't hear anything, and I'm looking at my phone and he's just banging on, Michael, open this door. And then he would leave, and then a few minutes later he'd come back and knock on it some more. Michael, open this door right now. Michael. And the other people are like, you might want to open the door. And I'm like, well, at this point, we're at the point of no return, so let's just see how this pans out. And so just picture the display. You got people on the other side, outside of the room, partying hard, just music cranking, dancing, yeah, everything like this. At this point, they got the Baltimore club music cranking, so it's really just jumping on the other side. You got us in the TV room watching Set It Off, and it's at the good part. It's when they start robbing Downtown Federal. And so, no, it wasn't Downtown Federal. It was Balboa Savings and Loans. That's that scene in the movie where Kimberly Elisa's character finally robs the bank, and she pretends to be one of the victims, and so she can't even do that right, and Vivica cusses her out. It was at that part, I remember it, like verbatim. And so it's right at the good part. Boss man keeps coming, Michael, open this door right now, you hear me? And then it got to the point where he got tired, so he would leave and come back. And so that 5th or 6th time he came back to the door, he just stopped and he just stood at the door and just stared. It was the weirdest thing. He just stood there, and I could see him looking straight at me from the corner of my eye. And mind you, he's not looking at anybody else. He hasn't called on anybody else in the room to come and get the door. All them people that he can see and who can see them, they're all invisible. It's just all my fault. Everything is me. Michael, you come open the door. And so he's just standing there, and at this point he's just staring. And now he looks defeated, and he just looks sad. And I'm like, who do we work for? What is this? This can't be real. And so he's like, you know what? You are fired. You are fired. And I'm like, okay, yeah, all right. And at this point, we realize he's drunk. So I'm like, you're not even going to remember this by tomorrow. So yeah, whatever. And so I had texted Keeney, who is the other GA, who's like my boss. And I'm like, yeah, Keeney, just so you know, apparently I'm fired. So talk to Boss Man tomorrow so I don't have to deal with this nonsense and everything like that. And so Boss Man leaves again. He's pissed off. He comes one more time. Now he's banging on the door. I'm like, what's going to happen if I open it? Is he going to come here and try to fight? Because I'll lay him out. We can do that. And then the best part is he finally realizes that since he is the person in charge of the whole dorm, he has a key. Use your key to open the door. So he comes back and he has the keys, but he can't figure out how to get the key in the door. I was like, yeah, he's twisted. We ain't got to worry about this. And so he struggles trying to open the door for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then he gives up and he leaves. And we don't hear from him for like another 20, 30 minutes. And so now the movie's getting real good and everything. Okay, Luther just stole the money. And they just killed Luther in the movie. And so it's getting real good. And out of nowhere, I hear like a knock on the door. Clack, 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 clack. And I look. It's the campus police. And the campus police officer is knocking on the door, and she has a flashlight, and she's flashing it into the room, which was weird because the lights were on. It's really bright in this room, and we're watching TV, so there's no need for a flashlight. And so one of the residents comes and opens the door, and the officer's like, what's going on in here? And I'm like, we're watching TV. And Tana Mae's like, yeah, we watching Set It Off. How you doing? And the officer is like, I was told y'all was in here doing drugs. And we're like, huh? Drugs? Huh? Ain't nobody in here doing no drugs. And the part that got me, we were like, officer, 3 of us actually work here as resident assistants. You'd think we'd be stupid enough to do drugs in the building with a glass door so all the other residents who are partying right outside the room could see us, on top of the fact that there's regular residents that are also in here. You'd think we would just light it up in here. Do you smell anything? Do you see anything? And you think we do it with the lights on with a glass door so everybody could see? Come on now. And so the officer is like, oh, okay, I mean, that's just what I was told by the director of the dorm. I said, you know what, that sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds just like Boss Man. I wanted to be petty and tell her, go smell his breath and tell me which person is on something at the moment. But I didn't want to stir up too much. Plus, I was like, apparently I'm fired right now, so I don't even know if I'm going to have a place to stay tomorrow. So let me ride this out smoothly. And of course, I was not fired. And it was funny because the next day, Boss Man comes downstairs. Michael, why must you do such things to me? Why must you be so difficult? And I was still trying to figure out, what is the origin of all this animosity towards me? I don't know what I did. Mind you, I was his resident assistant of the year before. So I'm like, where did all the hatred come from? I ain't do nothing. I mean, I did lock the door, but that was because he was annoying. He kept coming in, trying to bring all the residents in the room and party while we was trying to watch TV. So that was warranted. But other than that, I ain't do nothing. I was like, why you ain't cuss out today? I wasn't gonna bring her down with me or nothing, but I was like, dang, it's just funny that I kept being targeted every time. And the worst part is, one of them times that somebody vandalized his bulletin board, it was today, and I still got blamed for it. I was like, you know what? But anyway, back to this Z character I was telling you all about. So, randomly one day, I'm in my room, and this is around the same time. It might have been right before Snowmageddon or right after. It was all in that same kind of gray area. And I'm in my room. Now, mind you, Whitney is my co-RA. She stays on my same floor, and she stays down the hall. And so I'm in my room. I'm watching my Animal Planet, you know, when animals attack or something with the animals. I don't know, the lion chasing the antelope or something like that. That's right up my alley. And I get a text, and Whitney's like, get in here now. I'm like, huh? Get in here now? Who's she talking to? And so I was like, let me go see what's wrong with this girl. And so when I get there, one of the things that a lot of the people in Meridian would always do is you kind of sit with your door open. So if you wanted to be social, because Meridian was very communal. Actually, a lot of the dorms at Howard during that time were communal. Like if you ever were in the quad, the girls, they would open the door and just kind of have the doors open, and that was kind of like an invitation to come in and hang out. Same thing at Drew Hall, same thing at Slow, same thing at, I want to say Cook. Didn't really happen as much as the towers because of how the building was laid out. And then even at New Howard, they have the College Hill South and the College Hill North. It's not really the same anymore from what the people have told me, just because the dorms, the way that they're built, it's harder to be as communal. So I don't know if they still do it like that. But anyway, you know, you'd have your doors open if you wanted company or if you were open to people just coming in and hanging out. That's honestly how me and Tanae ended up being friends. I just had my door open one day when we were sophomores, and she walked in, and because I had the Cosby Show on my TV, and she was like, oh, this is my show. And she sat and watched like 2 episodes with me, and then we were tight ever since. But anyway, so I walked to Whitney's room, and her door's open, and I walk in there. There's this weird dude in there. I'm like, who was this? I'm like, oh, she must have got a new boyfriend she want to introduce me to. And so he's talking to her at the same time, and I'm just listening to the conversation. And at the same time as I'm listening, Tanae also comes in, and I think Nick comes in at the same time. And the guy is like, yeah, because I'm worth $100 million, and I know Jay-Z, and I know Jarlo and Ashanti, and the Obamas, they're aliens from the planet Nibiru, and when they came here, they came to destroy everything, and I just want to let people know I will kill anybody who goes against what it is I stand for. And I'm like, whoa, okay, somebody's on the cuckoo train here, and I'm looking at Whitney like, where you meet this one at? and Whitney's looking at me like, and so she's texting me at the same time while I'm standing there, because he's just really in the room, standing in the center of her room, going on this whole spiel, and Tanae's looking weird, and Nick's looking one way, and we're just like, what the hell? And so Whitney's texting me like, this Negro just walked in my room, and so nobody is leaving until he's out. And I'm like, okay. And then it's sinking in that something's wrong with this dude. So I play into his game, because I'm like, he ain't about to strangle and kill me. So he starts talking about, yeah, because when I'm a god, and I have the planet, and the injuries, the energies, that's what he said, the energies give me the power to obliterate anything that comes against me. I'm like, whoa, yeah, I know that's right. Me too. Sometimes I feel like I got powers too. And then Nick and Whitney look at me like, Negro, really? And out of nowhere, Z was like, I like this dude. This dude here smart. Because I'm like, who is this? And so we discover, okay, this is some guy that Bossman done invited to stay in his apartment for a few weeks. I don't know if Bossman was doing charity work, if that was a cousin or what. But Z was in the building. Z was crazy. We didn't discover Z was in the building until the last week or two that he was there, because there was even an event in the dorm, and I remember Whitney was like, there's this random dude that's just staring at me. It's kind of making me feel uncomfortable. And then it was so interesting because then when we fast forward, that's the same person that was standing in her room. We're like, yeah, okay. When I tell you Whitney's door was closed the rest of the week, that door was never open. And so eventually, Z must have flipped out on Boss Man as well. And Boss Man, which, God, I hope Boss Man is not hearing this because, man, this dude was crazy. So Boss Man and Z have some kind of falling out. Z takes over Boss Man's apartment in the building. Boss Man is now staying in one of the other dorm rooms that was vacant, and Z has his whole apartment. Z in there eating up all the food, watching the TV, just having a good time. And we were like, what the heck? Because Boss Man was never transparent with us about what was going on with Z. And so we'd see Z come in and out, and, you know, we were always supposed to ask students for their IDs when they come in if we didn't recognize them, but for some reason he had a pass to do whatever he wanted. And we were like, okay. And then eventually, when Z and Bossman had the falling out, Bossman was like, okay, Z has to go. And so Bossman was like, all right, I'm kicking him out. And it didn't go well. And so out of nowhere, Bossman got shook, and all of a sudden Bossman was staying in another whole room. And we're like, wait, so you invited somebody to stay at your place, invite somebody to stay at your place, you two fall out, you're scared to confront that person, so rather than kicking them out, you're now staying in a room that's across the hall from where you stay, which is an actual student dorm, and there's some random dude living in your whole apartment, and you haven't been in your own place for like a week. No wonder you're wearing the same thing every day. What's going on in here? So it gets to the point where the campus police actually have to come and get this person out of the building. And as resident assistants, we actually had a pretty good relationship with the campus police. I'm kind of, my viewpoints on police are everywhere all the time, but during this moment, they were very good. It was in a good place, especially with campus police. It's a totally different dynamic. And so, the campus police, first of all, not a lot would go down at Howard to begin with. Yeah, they'd have to break up a fight every now and then, or maybe there would be a situation on campus, but there was never a whole lot that happened on campus where the police had a lot of activity to address. So whenever something happened, they would be so excited, and they would show up all this gear and be talking all this trash about how they were gonna body slam this person and do all that. And we used to be looking like, okay. And so I remember I was like, oh, I wanna come. Let me come while y'all go and get him out the room, because dude was in the room upstairs, and I'm like, oh, please let me go. I can show y'all what a room is. Let me go. Because I really just wanted to see what they were going to do, because a lot of them were out of shape and everything like that. And like I said, they would spend so much time bragging about how they would do this and do that. I'm like, yeah, I want to see this. Ain't no way. Because I felt like Z could probably beat up about 3 or 4 of them at the same time. Z just seemed crazy. And the other thing was, a lot of times, campus police could be so sorry when you actually needed them. I will always remember I was working in the lobby. There was this big commotion out in front of the building. It was like 30 people outside, and it was about to be like 6 people getting into one big giant fight. And the biggest issue was the whole commotion was also blocking the driveway for the dorm. And so you had like delivery people that were bringing pizza and takeout that couldn't get in the driveway because there's this big mob out front. And you have parents who are trying to deliver things for their children and everything like that. And so it just wasn't a good look already. Like at the time, I was really, really invested in the university as well. So I really, really cared about branding and what made the university look good. Like it's weird. It's interesting. Sometimes when you go to these institutions, you end up becoming so saturated in them that they become a part of you. So I didn't want anybody to say nothing about Howard, and nobody was gonna say Howard was some ghetto school where kids fought all day. Not on my watch. And so the officer, I'm like, officer, we got to figure out something. This needs to be de-escalated because this is going to get bigger, and then we don't want anybody to get hurt. And this was an officer that would never really do much. He would sit there and just read his Bible every day when it was his time to work the lobby. And so I'm like, okay, again, officer, I think we need to figure out something because the crowd out front is only getting bigger. And now I just heard somebody say they're calling more people up here. So I think you need to figure this out now before somebody gets hurt. He acts like he can't hear nothing. Out of nowhere, you just hear boom, and I look, somebody gets slammed into the door. I'm like, oh shoot, now it's a real fight. And I ain't going out there because I ain't stupid enough to try to break up nothing with no 30 people. So I stayed right in my seat like, you better figure this out. And so the officer gets up, and I'm thinking he's about to follow some special protocol when you have a group fight or something like that. And he just gets his walkie-talkie and goes, I need assistance at the Meridian Hill Hall dorm. There's a situation outside. He really said it that slow. And then I'm looking like, well, by the time campus police get here from campus, which is 8 blocks down the other way, and they're going to drive, and that means they're going to have to get past Georgia Avenue, they're going to have to go past Sherman Ave, they're going to have to go past Euclid, they're going to have to get on the 16th. That's going to take 10-15 minutes. So I'm thinking, what else are we supposed to do? And then he gets up, moves extremely slow, grabs his whistle, and mind you, outside you just hear, something, thing, Baltimore, all that, and then you see him get up and go with a whistle. I said, huh? What? Man, come on now. And the funniest thing is, it was literally like, he blows a whistle, ain't nobody heard nothing, ain't nobody stopped, they just carried on and continued. And so I don't even know how the thing ended. I just remember people got in cars and sped off, and it wasn't because he had anything to do with it. It was more so like, okay, we could take this somewhere else, and so they went and took it somewhere else, fortunately. But dang, I was looking at that officer like, okay. So back to the main point, I had never really seen campus police ever really regulate anything. They would always just talk all this trash about what they were going to do, this, that, and the third. So I was like, okay, I want to see how Operation Evict the $100 million man from the free college dorm experiment is going to go. And so we get up there, and they're walking with all this confidence and pep in their step like they're really about to go and do something. And mind you, it was like 8 of them. And so I'm walking right behind them because they let me come because I just wanted to see from the side. I'm like, okay. So I'm kind of watching in the back. And then, they go to the apartment. Do. Campus police. And so he opens the door and they're like, yo, man, it's time for you to go. And he's like, oh, okay. Let me just get a few of my things. And they're like, oh, all right. Okay. We'll make it quick. He closes that door. He's in there for 30 minutes. That man took a shower, ate, he did all kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here like, this is how it goes, huh? All right. I'm thinking, they were going to be like, no, get your stuff and get out now. No, they let him take a shower, do all this other stuff. And then the most awkward part is, finally Z has all his stuff in his bag, and he comes out, and all the campus police move to the side, and he walks past them. Then he comes to me, and he's like, all right, my brother, I want you to take care. I want you to be great. I want you to be strong. I want you to hold it down. I'm like, huh? Yeah, all right. And so I done dapped him up, and I didn't know what to make of this because the Z that I saw in that room with Whitney was one step from killing everybody, and out of nowhere he's this calm, collected, tranquil spirit. I don't know if he had just did some chanting or yoga or what. He had some kind of green tea or something, but he was extremely calm, and so it was very awkward because you have this whole army of campus police there, and there's this guy who just voluntarily goes and leaves right out of the room with his little bag, and then he walked right out. And then the funniest part, Boss Man is over there hiding in the same TV room that, I apparently got fired from. He's in the back of the room on the corner, and Keeney's in there working security for Boss Man because Keeney used to be in the military. I said, this is one interesting place that I work. I will always remember these moments. Like, it was the craziest thing. And so we never saw Z again. Boss Man never mentioned Z, never wanted to talk about it. And so we're just like, okay, this is a lot. All right. Happy Thursday night. Around this time, I was still trying to find the balance of how to date a new girl. You're not quite over the last one yet. I mean, I was in a much better space in comparison to 6 and 7 months before, but I didn't quite have it all the way together. And so at that point, I was still dating on and off the girl from Tacoma Park. And so it wasn't even really a real relationship. It was more so we started out with the potential to fall into a relationship and then turn into a situationship and translated to friends with benefits. And so there was no substance in what it was that she and I had. So I was still trying to fill that void of companionship that I had with the old girl from UMD. But at the same time, I was 100% trash. And I remember my phone was nasty. Oh, my phone was so nasty. I had so much stuff in there, all kind of pictures I had taken, pictures that she had sent. I mean, boy, listen. And so one day, where were we at? We were in somebody's room, and I had been real low-key for about a good week and a half. And they had been like, Michael, where you been at? What you been doing? I'm like, oh, just studying, working hard. The usual. And Tana Mae was like, I feel like you out being wild again. You probably messing with that girl again. You messing with Tata Tatina again? Because that was her nickname for her. Or Tacoma. You messing with Tacoma again? And I'm like, no, not at all. I ain't talked to that girl in like 2-3 weeks. I don't even know what you talking about. And Tana Mae was like, give me your phone. And I was like, here. And so I threw her the phone because I felt like she wasn't going to be able to get the phone anyway because it had a password. But I forgot. I've always been really transparent. Like, I'm one of those people who can be really transparent with their friends. And so Tana Mae knew all of my passwords, and even today, like, she got my Netflix account, my Xfinity account, my Hulu, all kind of crap like that. And so she unlocks my phone, and the first thing, I'm sitting here minding my business, and I just hear I hear her read, "I just want to hold you." I'm like, shit. And so I realized she's opened my phone, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, oh wait, I took a bunch of nasty pictures, and if she scrolls hard enough in this conversation, she's about to see everything. When I tell you I did a karate chop flip across that room and lunged at her to get my phone back, I fought for my life. Didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. Like, it was crazy. I fought with the determination of Alicia Keys being a soprano. I wasn't having it. Give me my phone today. And I mean, we wrestled and tugged around that room, and eventually I got it back. And she was like, dang, well, what you got to hide? I'm like, don't worry, it's enough in here. Because you know, that's the one thing. If you got a bunch of crap in your phone, the worst thing that can happen is somebody get to it. Because, woo, if she would have saw what me and old girl were talking about. Because you know, when you're texting, you just have all kind of confidence. You be saying all kind of stuff you don't even normally say in person. So that was a terrible text thread. I mean, it had all kind of supporting visuals. Oh, the memories, the growth. My phone is very clean now because I work with children, and I don't want the mishap of anything ever accidentally getting sent via airdrop or something, my cloud gets hacked or something. Not doing it. So, my phone is very clean, all right? It's safe enough to show to Jesus, Black Jesus, and my mother, and Felicia Rashad. And if I ever ran for public office and they hacked my phone, I wouldn't have too much to worry about. Y'all know I am not telling the truth, but it's okay. My phone is a little bit cleaner than back then. And while we're on the subject of dating, I will always remember this time this girl and I went out. And she and I had gone out a few times. It was never anything too serious, but there was potential for something to happen. And so this specific day, we went out, went to this restaurant. And I mean, we did it up. Appetizers, drinks, main entree, dessert, and followed up with coffee and all the stuff like that. And so the bill had to at least be like $140, which for two college students that don't have full-time jobs and you know are on a very limited source of income that's coming in, that's like a whole mortgage payment. And so, you know, normally she and I would always split the bill, or if it was like a smaller bill where it was only like $40, I would just sometimes cover it and everything like that. And so out of nowhere, she goes, I know usually when we go out, you know, we usually go half and half, but I've been reading the Steve Harvey book, the Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, and he says that sometimes it's really intimidating when girls pull out their wallet, and sometimes men like it when a woman just lets a man be a man, and I don't know if that bothers you, so you know what? I'm gonna sit this one out, brother. And then she gonna tap my hand, and I'm looking at, what? What? Wait a minute, huh? You said what? Steve who? Steve? Just know, she and I never went out again for like 6 months. And the thing about it is this, I didn't have a problem paying the bill because that's just what I've always been taught as a gentleman, you know, go ahead and cover the bill if it's somewhat of a date. And I'm like, okay, but the thing was this, if I knew I was going to be paying for everything that day, we would have gone somewhere much cheaper. There wouldn't have been no appetizers and extra drinks and extra coffee, and I wouldn't have let her just go and get the most expensive thing on the menu that she didn't even eat all the way, and then didn't even want a to-go box. And so it was just like, man. And so I was like, dang, come on now. Steve Harvey, I was like, the fact that you at 21, 22 are really trying to read this book from some guy who's giving you the perspective of a man in his mid-40s to early 50s, Steve Harvey and I have nothing in common. So don't listen to him when it comes to dating advice, especially when we're some 20-year-olds with no money. Come on now. Oh, and then it was the same time I was in the same room with Whitney Houston and Diddy. And so I'm working in the lobby and my shift has just started. I see Keene come down with this big old giant fur coat on. I mean, she's all jazzed up and done up, got her makeup, got the nails. I'm like, where you going? And so she's sitting in the lobby like, I can't tell you, you just gotta, don't worry about it. I'm like, wait a minute, ain't no dates this early, because at this point, it's only like 10 in the morning. I'm like, where you going? And it ain't no church, because nobody dresses like that for church, so where you going? And she's like, don't say nothing. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna say nothing. Where are you going? Said, I'm going to BET Honors. You know, they honor Whitney Houston. You going to BET Honors honor Whitney Houston? Michael, shut up. I said, don't tell nobody. Oh, my bad. I want to go. How do I get to go? And she's like, I'm going as a seat filler, and so I got the scoop from this person, and they invited me. So, I mean, I can give you the number, you can text and see if you can be invited, but you need to figure out who's gonna work your shift. Oh, okay, no problem. The way I scrolled through my phone and found another RA to cover my shift, because my shift was only an hour, and at that point, I'd already worked like the first 20 minutes of it, and I'm like, yeah, you know, if you cover my shift, I'll cover like 4 of your hours later in the week or something like that. And so, I mean, they said yes. I ran to my room, I went and got my suit, and mind you, I wasn't even paying attention. I had 2 black suits at the time, and so I had the jacket from one with the pants of the other, and didn't even notice until I got to the venue later on. But I mean, I raced and I got down to the lobby, and at this point, I get downstairs. Keeney's down there. There's like 3 more people that have come, and I'm like, oh, so this was just the whole group thing, huh? Keene, you was just gonna go to BET Honors and not even tell me, and you got all these people coming, okay? And so it's like 3 other residents, and for some reason we're all waiting in the lobby because there was somebody that was gonna be driving us, and like there was one of her friends was gonna be driving us, and another person was coming with a second car. And so at the same time, Whitney comes downstairs, and I think she was coming to check her mail or something, and she's like, Michael, what are you dressed up for? And then she looks at Kenny, wait, where are y'all going? And Kenny had already swore me to secrecy, so I'm like, what, this whole thing? I'm just trying on different outfits. And Whitney's like, I know you lying because you look like you about to sell some bean pies. Where are you going? And then one of the other people that was standing with Kenny, oh, we're going to BET Honors. Whitney looked at me, oh, really? That's where y'all going, huh? Michael, you weren't going to tell me? And I was like, I couldn't say nothing. Kenny told me not to say nothing. Hell, I'm not even supposed to be going. I'm just at the right place at the right time. Don't mess this up for me. And so the thing about it was this. Whitney was a huge Whitney Houston fan. As a matter of fact, her mama named her after Whitney Houston. And then on the flip side, Tana Mae was a huge Whitney fan as well. She always credits Whitney Houston for being the person who taught her to sing. But at the time, I thought Tanae was at her boyfriend's house in Maryland, so I didn't even think she was in a dorm. And so Whitney's like, oh, okay, so you just gonna go to BET Honors, huh? Okay. And then while we're waiting, 2 or 3 more people come down dressed up. And mind you, one of the people is like the biggest weed head in the dorm, just high all day. And Whitney was like, wait, I know this Negro ain't going. And I'm looking like, Kenny, are they going too? And Kenny, yes. I'm like, Kenny, you not helping the situation. Whitney was like, oh, have fun, Michael. Have fun. I hope you enjoy. I'm like, yeah, I will. And so, anyway, we get to BET Honors, and I tell you, it was just this magical experience. And I mean, I'm gonna rub this crap in because it was just that good. You had to get through the logistics at first, and they tell you exactly what's gonna be going on. And this was a pre-taping because it wasn't gonna air for a few weeks, but that year they were gonna be honoring Queen Latifah. They were gonna honor Whitney Houston. They were gonna honor Diddy and like 2 other people. And so, they give us all the logistics. And so initially they put us all in the theater first. And this is the Warner Theater in DC. And so they put us in all these different seats. And what a seat filler does is pretty much when the award shows air, a lot of times the celebrities are not always in all of the seats. Sometimes they're backstage. Sometimes they're about to perform. Sometimes they don't show up until they get their award and then they go home. A bunch of different things like that. And so seat fillers, you just put them in the seats of where the celebrities will be, so when the camera pans to the audience, the venue doesn't look empty. And so they spread us in all these different spots, and mind you, you're probably gonna move a lot as well. So say Usher is sitting somewhere. Usher is getting ready to perform, so he needs to go backstage and be on deck, and then they'll put you in Usher's seat, and then when Usher's done, he'll come back to his seat and they'll put you in another open spot. That's how it works. And so they put us in all of our seats, and I'm hyped because this is, I'm not somebody who's starstruck, but I was excited because I'm like, oh, Whitney Houston and Diddy and Queen Latifah? Okay, cool. And mind you, just an hour before, this was not even on my radar, so this was just thrown into my lap. So I was a little flabbergasted. It took me in. And so, they have us sitting there, and the seat fillers are placed in the event like a whole 2 hours before it even starts. And so you're there, and people are starting to slowly trickle in. And this time, they had a comedian just kind of entertaining people and telling jokes. And so he starts going around. He's like, is there anybody who has a talent or a gift that they would like to share? And at this point, the celebrities are finally starting to come in and everything. And they're going around the room, and mind you, of course, like I said, Whitney Houston is in the room. And this was right after Whitney had just come out with a new album. It had been #1 and sold like 300-something thousand copies. And she was just about to go on tour and everything like that. And so it was a big deal that Whitney was going to be there because this was like the comeback for Whitney. And so, of course, people, oh yeah, I got a talent. I can sing. So everybody who went up there and got the mic, because he would let them go on the stage and sing while all these celebrities are still filling in and the band is doing sound check and everything like that. Everybody and their mom was trying to sing these Whitney songs. And when I tell you, sometimes people, I guess when you're excited, you try to do the most and it just doesn't go well. This girl tried to do Run to You, butchered it. I was like, what were you doing? It was too many runs, way too many runs. It was like, where are you running to? Just sing the song. And so it just didn't go well. And she, she started crying, trying to pretend that she was just so moved that she was singing for Whitney. Then another person went and tried to do this Chrisette Michele song, and they messed that up too. Like, I was like, ooh. And so he kept going around the audience. Is there anybody who has a gift? Anybody who has a talent? And so at the time, one of the people in our group could really, really, really sing. And I was like, they need to be up there and sing. And so he comes to my row, he points to me, you got a talent, you sing, or you do jokes, what you do? And I for some reason, I froze up and was like, nothing. And then I was trying to point to my friend, and my friend was like, I don't do nothing either. I'm like, dang. And so I always wonder, what would have happened had I had myself together and said yes? I probably would have told some jokes. I wasn't going to go up there and sing. But I just always wondered, like, had I gone up there and told some jokes, what would I be doing today? Would that have opened some doors? Because, Deborah Lee was sitting in there at that point. Diddy was in there. Whitney Houston was in there. Queen Latifah was in there. Neil was in there. Jennifer Hudson was in there. Tashina Arnold was in there. Stevie Wonder was in there, Patti LaBelle was in there, After 7 was in there, India Ari was in there, Trey Songz was in, like, it was so many people in there, and for some reason, I don't know why I said no, and why I said I had no talents. Idiot. Who knows where I'd be today? I'm actually happy where I'm at, but I'm just saying, it could have been something different. But anyway, the night is magical. I mean, it's a great evening, just excellent. And I mean, the camera is, you're trying to get your little camera time because the cameraman would pan to your face and everything like that. And I mean, it was an excellent event. It was just a really magical thing that just empowered me for the rest of the school year. And there were other parts that they had that didn't actually air. Like, there was a moment where, like, Whitney's album had just went double platinum worldwide, and so they came and brought her, like, the platinum plaques. But I don't think they showed that when it actually aired on TV. And so the time came where I had to actually go back to the dorm. And when Tanae found out I was in the same room with Whitney Houston and did not tell her or give her a heads up, I got all kind of cussed out. Even though I was like, I didn't even know you were here. I thought you were gone for the weekend, because normally on the weekends she would tip out and go either into Maryland with the boyfriend or go visit her family further down south or wherever. So sometimes during the weekend she was nowhere to be found. So I was like, I didn't even know you were upstairs. She was like, I was upstairs. I'm like, oh, my bad. Well, take it up with Keeney. So Whitney and Tanae hated me for a few days, and then it didn't help that when it aired, it was just this great presentation, and it was like, oh God, the wound opened again. And then it was even worse when Whitney Houston died like 2 years later, because she was like, I had a chance to actually meet her, but somebody didn't give me the heads up, and so now she's dead. Her missing Whitney Houston would be like the equivalent of if Janet Jackson magically decided to come to my center and say, I want to honor you because you've done so much great work with these kids for 8 years, and your center's ranked this in the country, and we want to celebrate you. And then when she showed up, I wasn't there because I called in sick. Like, that was the equivalent. Like, that's what it felt like. So, my bad. You too, Whitney. My bad. They both hate me for that a good minute. But to be honest, that's payback for the time they snuck off to Florida and didn't tell me. I'm over here struggling in class and it's cold outside, and these two at the beach didn't tell nobody. Just randomly decided they were gonna fly to Florida that day and forgot to tell me. That was back when AirTran existed, and back then you could get a flight for like $70 with one of those little college deals. It all just depended on how close the cities were. This was also a really unique time because for some reason Boss Man thought that we all needed a group therapist to come and work with all of us, because he felt that we as a team were not all on the same page. And so he invited this lady named Miss Jackson. Yes, I thought it was cool. Miss Jackson, if you're nasty. Yes, I was like, okay, yeah, she's gonna be dope. Little did Miss Jackson know she was in for it, because we were about to cut up in this session. And so mind you, the night before we found out we had to go to the session, we were all pissed off because it was going to be on our Saturday, and everybody wanted to sleep in, because again, when you're in college, nobody gets up at 8 o'clock for fun unless you have something to do that has some kind of substance, like a study group or you have to work or something else. But some of these meetings and stuff Bossman would have, a lot of times they weren't real meetings. I remember when he used to have the staff meetings, he would just rant and talk for like 2 and 3 hours about anything. He would start about how we needed to do a better job with the mail, and somehow that would translate into people at the university not caring about him, and when he was a child, this person pushed him off the swing. Like, you'd be like, you been there for 3 hours. And so none of us wanted to go. And we had all made this pact like, okay, well, ain't nobody, if none of us show up, what's gonna happen? We're not going, I'm not going. And Bossman didn't really put emphasis on everybody having to go, and the real people who need to go, Donald needs to go, if you remember Donald from the last episode, and this person needs to go, and that person needs to go, but the rest of us, we don't need to go. And I'm like, yeah, I was resident assistant of the year, I don't know what I gotta go for. And so we had all went to bed with the agreement that ain't nobody going. So I'm sleeping good, good sleep. When you have that good sleep in a blanket, the heat is just like the right perfect temperature and everything like that. I mean, that night there wasn't a whole bunch of noise in the dorm. I didn't have to get up and tell nobody to shut up at 2 in the morning because they decided to sit here and do a whole step routine in the hallway. It was good sleep and a good nod. My phone rings. It's AJ and Rochelle on the phone. Hey, where you at? Well, I'm in my bed. What y'all waking me up for? Oh, you not at the training? No, what y'all the only 2 people there? I thought we weren't going. Everybody's down here. Everybody? Yeah, everybody down here. Even Donald? Yeah, Donald was down there too. Oh, hell. So then I had to get up, throw something on real quick, run downstairs. At this point, the training has been going on for at least 45 minutes. So I come down, and as soon as I get in there, Bossman goes, oh, and this is our RA of the year, Michael. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. We're so glad that we were on your priority list. And I'm looking like, you shitty MFer. And then I'm looking at everybody else like, what happened? What happened? Miss Jackson was really cool about it though. Like, she had the most pleasant spirit. Like, I really enjoyed being around her. But the funniest thing was, everything was good. Everything was well. Everybody was getting along. It was going smoothly. We still had about 2 hours left in the training. And then we had to do this activity. And she had asked for one of us to divide the apple, like this random apple. And we had to divide it into 17 pieces or something like that, because there were 17 of us. And so Whitney was one who volunteered to cut the apple. Somehow Whitney and Bobby Bobby said something to Whitney, and they got into some kind of argument about the apple. Like, mind you, all we had to do was cut the apple. It turns into this whole fight, and then Bobby was like, well, dang, Whitney, sorry. And Whitney goes, well, most niggas are. I was like, oh, shoot. And then Miss Jackson's like, whoa, we're not gonna do that. We're not doing that today. And Bob was like, oh, really? And so Whitney storms off and throws a little knife down, and the apples all spread across the floor. And Whitney goes upstairs and doesn't come back down for like an hour. And so I think Danae or somebody, or Nick or somebody was trying to text her to come back down. And then at the same time, we were towards the end of the training, and we were supposed to sign some kind of pledge about how we were going to do things better, and everything was good. And then one of the other RAs was like, wait, I'm not signing this. What do you mean we pledged to do this? There was something in the pledge that was kind of a weird stipulation, but none of us were taking it serious because it was just some random activity. We all were ready to go back home or go back upstairs. And so this one RA is holding out on signing this stupid little petition that carries no weight. Because at this point, I think Whitney had found her way back downstairs. Somebody convinced her to come back down, and she ain't talking to nobody. She rolling her eyes. She got her shades on. And the RA that's holding out is really stuck on this. Like, yeah, I'm not signing this. I'm not signing my life away to nothing. And then everybody's looking like, Negro, you don't even do no work, no way. If you don't sign this thing so we can go. And then at the same time, one thing Nick would always do, if there was some nonsense, Nick would be like, I don't know about y'all, but I'm out. Like, every time. If there was something crazy, I don't know about y'all, but I'm out. So they're having this whole argument because now Tanae jumped in and she's still yelling at the other RA like, you don't even do no work. Just sign the thing so we can go. And then Nick was like, I don't know about y'all, but I'm out. And that set Tanae off. And Tanae was, every time we got to do something, you always the first one trying to leave. You ain't going nowhere. This, that, and third. And I mean, everybody in the room is having this whole argument. And poor Miss Jackson is just, okay, all right, guys, I mean, that was the most fun, like, that was the funniest training. I died when it was over, because, I mean, we ended up worse off than when we started. Everybody was already cool to begin with, but by the time that training was over, nobody was speaking to anybody. I mean, that was worse than when the yoga lady came. We always had to go to these really crazy trainings. There was another training we had one time where the training was actually on the main campus, and it was a training with all the resident assistants from all of the other, I think there were like 10 dorms or something like that. And so this training was like a training a lot of people forgot about. And so, of course, I'm in my bed, sleeping real good. I used to sleep with the radio on, and of course, they were always playing the nice, calm, collective music when it's still early in the morning. And then I get a text message, and it's Keeney, and Keeney's like, yo, some of us need to go to this training on campus right now because the Dean of Residence Life is pissed off because nobody from Meridian is there. I'm like, huh? What training? Like, we had no idea there was a training. So the few of us who were in the building, we end up going. So it's like me, it's Keeney, it's Nick, it's Whitney, and like 2 other RAs. The other RAs that didn't go, either they weren't in the building or they were somewhere else, or, you know, it is what it is. And so this training is awkward. There's this lady there. It's like this older black woman that's running the training. And so when we came in, the training had already started. And so she's ranting and raving and saying all these really crazy things. And, you know, and another thing, because y'all are the staff, y'all can't date none of the students on the campus. And I'm like, wait, what sense does that make? Who am I supposed to date then? And so she's talking about that. And another thing is, Howard don't be honest with stuff because they think, you know, they get mad if you can't do it hanging from the ceiling no more. Huh? And another thing, Howard always want to make everything purple with zebra print and try to cover stuff up. And we were so confused at what part of the training we had come into. And then she's sitting there doing this whole rant and going off about this, that, and the third. And out of nowhere, mind you, like I said, we had already came in late. And so we had been in there for another 15 minutes. And she's like, oh, wait a minute. Did I introduce myself? My name is Sharon Banks. We're like, okay. And so Sharon was not playing with anybody. Like, Sharon had her rules. You weren't allowed to be on your cell phone. There was this girl from another dorm whose phone went off. She went and tried to confiscate the phone. I'm like, this doesn't work with adults. You're not taking nobody's phone. But the girl's boss from the other dorm was like, just give her the phone, please, because we don't need any more fights in here. And so Sharon's doing this training, but the bit I remember, like, Whitney just had the worst of luck with these trainings. We start getting on the subject of campus safety when it comes to sexual assault and everything like that. And so the lady's like, because if there's more than one rape with the same girl, what's gonna happen when she show up the first time? And we were so confused, like, huh? Wait, that question, we were trying to piece it together. And mind you, this training, we don't know what the purpose of the training was. There were no handouts, there was no slideshow. It was just Sharon Banks sitting at a table in front of a mic talking. And the subject would jump from here to there to everywhere. And so we went from Howard having zebra print to rape to don't date the other students to I said no cell phones to I got a son who's 21 and he don't be listening and that's why I be freezing his bank account. And so when out of nowhere this question about rape came and there was no context behind the question, and then she just points at Whitney and Whitney was like and then Sharon Banks, well, is it an old rape or is it a new rape? And Whitney, well, come on girl, speak up, don't you go to Howard, you a student, let's go. And Whitney was like, and then the girl's like, oh, you must not be in the school of communications. And I'm sitting here looking like, listen, you might not want to try it with Whitney because you must not know. Whitney would knock a table full of apples over and run upstairs with them shades on, like you don't want to piss her off. And so Sharon like ends up answering the question herself, and it was the most confusing thing. And then she gets on the subject of STDs and how college students got to be careful with STDs, and she starts telling her own story. And this is when I became sure that I was not going to heaven, because she starts talking and she's like, there was a time I had some kind of infection and my whole neck was white. As a matter of fact, I had a hole right up under here and nobody would talk to me. Nobody would want to share a drink with me. And the worst part is when I came to the office, it was like people had sprayed Lysol everywhere. Everybody just treated me real bad. And I was a cute little bunny back then. And that was just 2 years ago. Oh, when I tell you my entire row, I had to just bend down and tie my shoe. I was shaking in that chair laughing so hard. I was like, what is going on? What is this? This has to be a joke. Like, that crap was hilarious. And then the worst part was she rambled so much that she ran out of time and then got pissed because we all had to leave. And she was, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a 4-hour training. What you mean y'all got to go? We gonna have to schedule part 2 of this. So there ain't gonna be no part 2. I ain't never coming back to this crap again. I mean, those trainings used to be hilarious, but I think the funniest moment ever when it came to these RA trainings, one time we had a training and it was like a night training. Now at this time, it was also Res Fest again, something I did not want to do. This would have been the 4th time in a row that I had to do something in association with Res Fest. Again, if you haven't followed the podcast, Res Fest is just like this big giant Olympics between all the dorms. And I was always put over the dance competition because I had a background in choreography. And Bossman was like, I really need you to take it home this year because we had a really good year the year before. And so on this specific night, we only had like 2 or 3 weeks left until Res Fest. And the RA training that we had, which was another training with all of the resident assistants across the campus, was exactly at the same time as one really important practice that we had. And so Bossman had already told me, okay, you know what, this is what we're gonna do. You can go to like the first hour of training and then I'm gonna let you go and you can go and coach your team and everything like that. And at the same time, there was another RA, Lauren, who was the RA in charge of dance. And so I done talked all this trash before the meeting, like, yeah, I ain't even about to be here that long, because, I got to choreograph the show, they need me for my expertise and all my wisdom and everything like that, and I got to keep this team in line, and so, this, that, and the third, but y'all have fun at this little dry training that's going to last for 50, 100,000 hours, and so, we're at the training, and so all of the Meridian RAs are sitting together. We're sitting in the front 2 rows. Now, mind you, in this room, there's probably about 100 people. There's people from the other 9 dorms, there's all the GAs, there's the other community directors, and then there's some other officials and stuff like that, and so the man is doing his little training. He shows some clips. I look at my watch. Oh, it's been an hour. And I had told Lauren, like, I'm going to be leaving because, I got to run the thing. She's like, well, I'm leaving too with you. I'm like, oh, okay. And then Theo is the RA who has the card. He's like, well, hell, if y'all leaving, I'm going to leave too. And so we had made this arrangement like, okay, well, Theo will give us a ride back to Meridian because, of course, the training was on the main campus. And so that would be our way for all 3 of us to get out of the training. And so, we get out. And mind you, the dynamics of everything. People in the very front 2 rows randomly getting up and walking out. Theo's like 6'5". Add that to the fact that I had on this big giant white and blue striped golfer hat. And so the 3 of us get up, walk out, so it's very obvious that we're leaving. We make it out into the main lobby of the room that we're in. And while we're there, Theo sees somebody he knows in the lobby. So he stops to talk to them for like a quick minute. And so we're standing there waiting, and then I see Bossman coming. I'm like, oh God. He's like, listen, I know you're excited about doing the practice, and I said you can go, but, the dean wants you to stay for at least one more segment, so can you guys go back? And so mind you, remember, I didn't talk all this trash because that was the one thing. I was the RA who always ran his mouth and I ain't scared of this and I ain't gonna be doing that and then every time I'd end up doing everything I said I wouldn't do. I was always that person. Just picture like Chris Tucker on Friday when he's like, yeah, he said be quiet, I'll be quiet. Then I'd be talking again. Like, that was me at the time. And so I'm like, dang, man. And so we go back in, and the other RAs from Meridian are kind of like smirking and everything like that. And I'm still talking trash. Well, that's fine, because after this clip, I'm leaving for real this time. I ain't coming back. Ain't nobody gonna sucker me back into coming here, because I ain't no punk. Secondly, they're the main ones who always say, oh, we need a grand routine. Now all of a sudden you want me to sit in this old stupid training that don't even make no sense. When I leave, I'm going, I'm coaching my teams. They need to respect my artistry. Like, I'm talking all this trash in the front row. And I'm over here sizing Lauren up and everything, getting her hyped. Like, yeah, man, we about to go, because ain't nobody about to sit here all day. I got stuff to do, and this training is stupid anyway. And really, it was like some dumb training. A lot of the trainings never really served a full purpose. It didn't help you do your job more effectively. It was always some kind of training that just uplifted the spirits of everybody. So I'm in there talking all my trash. And again, like I said, we're in the front two rows, and I done said all this stuff and everything like that. So the clip ends, I get up, Lauren gets up, Theo gets up, I walk out of there with so much confidence, like, yeah, and what? I dare y'all to say something. And so I'm walking out and going, and we get right into the lobby, but this time we don't make it as far into the lobby. And out of nowhere, I hear somebody saying, call him back, and it's the dean. And so I'm like, walk faster. Boss man comes back out, Michael, Theo, Lauren, you guys are gonna have to come back and just come into the training. And I'm like, damn. And so it was so funny because I knew that when I went back in there, everybody from Meridian was gonna fall out because I done talked all this trash, and guess who's coming back? And so I know that when I walk back in there, most likely my entire Meridian section is gonna be looking back, waiting to see me walk back in so they can roast me for the rest of the training and for the rest of the evening. And so I'm kind of standing on the side, and I don't even peek my head in. I'm just kind of standing there trying to get my life together. And so Theo goes in. I don't hear any laughter. I'm like, okay, good. Lauren goes in, and Lauren's pissed off because she mad. I done hyped her up, and now she more madder than I am. And so she goes in, and so it's like there's dead silent. And the worst part is, the guy who's doing the presentation is waiting and letting us all come in before he finishes. So it's dead silent. All the attention is on the three people that are walking back in the room. So Theo goes back in, no commotion. Lauren goes back in, no commotion. Now remember, I said I had on a blue and white striped golfer hat. I take one step. Literally like an inch of the brim of my hat just peeks past the doorway. Just that piece alone. The minute everybody in the Meridian section saw that piece of my hat and then saw me step out, I mean, they all fell out dying. It was so pretty. Like, I remember Bobby was in tears. Tanae was over there rolling. She thought that crap was funny. AJ was laughing. This dude Ishmael was cracking up. And Ishmael was funny because Ishmael never even really ran with us like that. He had his own crew, but I mean, Ishmael was in there shaking. Like, the whole Meridian section thought it was so funny. And everybody else in the room didn't really understand what was going on. But that Meridian section, I mean, people were in tears. And so I had to take that walk of shame. And it seemed like that walk to the front was so long. I was like, you know what? I stopped and I sat like in the middle. I didn't even want to go back and sit with the Meridian folks. And so I'm sitting there looking all pissed off and sour faced. And then the worst part is I get like 3 text messages. And Whitney sends me a text and she's like, you bad. Get up and lead a meeting. Get up and lead a meeting. And then when I looked up front where she was sitting, she was turned all the way around looking me dead in my eye with this face like, go ahead, get up, feeling froggy. And the funniest thing is, I always used to say, you bad, school me. That was my phrase all senior year. So she pretty much took my phrase and twisted it against me because you bad, get up and lead a meeting. Get up and lead a meeting. Like, I mean, that was so funny. I don't know why that crap was that hilarious, but I mean, it was like they were waiting for me because I had been talking so much trash for weeks. I had been talking trash about not going to the meetings and this, that, and the third. And so for me, who had all this mouth to finally hunker down and get put in my place at the moment and be reminded, okay, you better get your stuff together because you ain't running anything up in here. I mean, it was like just straight gold for them. Man, that was such a funny day. And we still laugh at that all the time, even today. And so, moving forward, around this time was also spring break. And so I found out that my grandma wasn't doing too well. I found out she had cancer and had stage 4 cancer at that. And I was like, oh shoot, which, you know, stage 4 is usually, it's not a good look. You know what I mean? The chances of survival are extremely slim. And so she had a brain tumor. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm definitely going to Savannah for spring break. So I went to Savannah for spring break. And there was a lot that was going on at that time because it's getting closer to graduation. I'm still hustling in class too. Like I had 8 classes. I was taking 21 credits. That's the max you can take a semester. And so I couldn't afford to mess up anything because I messed up the first semester. I had to retake the 2 classes on top of the other classes I already needed. And so I was already drained out. There was a lot going on. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen after graduation because at this point I knew I really didn't want to go to grad school right away, and because I really wanted to do A&R and I wanted to go to New York and I wanted to do all these other things. And so it was a really complicated time, and this was the first time I had a family member I was close to that was actually sick. And I remember it was really bad because we had went to my grandma's house, and at the time my grandma really was in denial about what was going on. And another thing is when people have brain tumors and when they get really sickly, they almost turn into a different person. Like they start cussing you out and everything like that, and they're really irate. And so there was this time we got to my grandma's house. I think it was the night I landed. Got to my grandma's house, and my grandma insisted on still staying in her house. She didn't want any nurses at the house. She didn't want to go to any kind of home. She didn't want to be in the hospital or anything like that. And so she insisted on being in her house. And so the tumor had paralyzed her from the waist down. And so when we got into the house, I guess she had been sitting on the couch. Like somebody had placed her on the couch, but for some reason, somehow she must have slid down and fell. So when we came in and opened the door, I opened it, and my grandma was like on her knees with her back leaning against the couch. So she'd probably been in that position for hours. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And my grandma, I'm fine. I can walk when I'm all right. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. And so, I remember we like put her in the tub to try to bathe her and everything like that. And then she started having bed sores and her skin was peeling. And then there was like this infection. We had to call the ambulance. And then she didn't want to go in the ambulance and she wouldn't let anybody touch her. And then she was like, only my grandsons can touch me. Only my grandbabies can touch me. So me and my cousin Brandon, because he happened to be there, we were the ones who had to literally carry her and put her in the ambulance and then stay with her to the hospital. And then she was pretty much in the hospital for the rest of that spring break. And we spent the whole spring break in the hospital. And she just got worse each day, and I was like, man, this is crazy, because I had no idea. Like, I had just saw her for Christmas, 4 months earlier. She was just fine, or maybe it was 3 months earlier, 3 or 4 months earlier, and she was just fine. No idea about anything. She had cancer the whole time, and she didn't know it. We didn't know it, and it just accelerated and got progressively worse and just did a number. And so the last time I saw her, she was in the hospital. It was like the day before I needed to go back to class. And so I kind of knew I probably wasn't going to see her again. And like I said, if you followed my podcast episodes before, my grandmother was my favorite person in the world. I didn't get the luxury of having a grandma that lived by me. My grandma lived 3,000 miles away from me as a kid. Like, she lived in Savannah, I lived in Washington State. So I only got to see her during Christmas and summer. So grandma's house was Disneyland. Grandma's house was the only house that was always a consistent for me because we moved so many times. As a matter of fact, I was talking to my brother about this the other day. I'm like, we've lived in 14 different houses since birth, like as far as moving around. It became more solid once I hit about our last move was my 10th grade year. That was the last time we moved to a house. But we stayed in different apartments and stayed here, and I had to stay with this relative and all kind of stuff. But my grandma's house was the one thing that was always consistent. So the fact that grandma would no longer be there meant that the entire dynamics of what I know would change as far as what's going to happen with grandma's house and what's going to happen. Like, grandma's house is the meeting spot for everybody. And, so the last time I saw her, I knew it was it because I remember I tried to do the whole I love you thing, and I think I said this in the first episode, but she pretty much gave me the middle finger and $20, which is very grandma of her. That's exactly the person I know. So I was like, yeah, I think that her time is up. But that was exactly what I expected of her. So yeah, the last interaction with my grandma was she gave me the middle finger and $20. I love that lady. It was crazy. And so she, that was the last time I saw her. So anyway, coming back to campus, spring break is over. I'm still hustling and bustling, trying to make it through these classes, and them classes are kicking my behind. My internship with the School of C is wearing me out. I still gotta be an RA. Like, there's not enough hours in a day. I am worn out. And at the same time, I'm trying to do this stupid ResFest competition. Now, this specific year, I was not gonna perform with the team. I was only gonna coach. The one good thing that came out of it was there was another girl that was on the team, this girl named Katya, and Katya was great. Like, she actually was a really, really great dancer, and so I pretty much let her take on a lot of the routine. Like, I choreographed about half the routine, she choreographed the other half. We put our brains together, and it was just a really good formula. I went ahead and mixed the music. I let them kind of take on making the battle routines, even though I did some of them, and it was going all right. And then one day, Lauren sends me this tweet. And the tweet is about me, and it's somebody from the dance team who doesn't like how I do things. They don't like my choreography, they don't like this, they don't like that, so on and so on. Now, to put some things into context, the difference between this team and the other 3 years that I had done ResFest, pretty much every person on this team had a background in dance, which I thought was wonderful. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Like, I don't have to work as hard because they're just gonna get it. No. I think I had to work the hardest with this group. And the other issue was they were all so cocky because, oh, I went to this school and this day and I had this training, and so they had all that. But then when it was time to put stuff together, there was nothing. And I gave them like the lane to choreograph a lot of it themselves. And they just didn't quite understand what the expectation was for something like ResFest, and so they kept giving me these talent show routines. I'm like, that's not it. And so a lot of the stuff I was like, nope. Sorry, y'all need to go back, look at the previous years of what the other groups were doing. Y'all gotta come harder than this. And to be fair, there was 2 members on the team who were actually really, really great. And so I did a lot of the ideas that they came up with ended up coming into the routine, which was great because I was trying to fall back some. I wasn't trying to be a control freak because, look, Leos, we like to be in control of everything. And so, the 2 that I was talking about did a really great job of like adding to the routines and stuff. And so at the same time, I was really stressed because I was trying to not really choreograph much. I'm trying to graduate. Who cares about ResFest? And so, I was giving them opportunities to really step up and nobody would do it. And so I had to still come up and clean house and do things. And so one of the people didn't like, some of the material and this, that, and third. And I'm like, you know what? First of all, and so I was about to lighten to the team and I said, you know what? Okay, think back to when you were 18, 19, you probably would have did the same thing, this, that, and third. But I was really annoyed. And so I remember I was talking to Whitney about it. Whitney was like, oh, hell no, ain't nobody about to talk about my friend like that. And so Whitney storms downstairs because Whitney was the resident assistant that was over all of ResFest for Meridian. I was just over dance, but she was over all of the different events, and she'd be the overseer for everything. And so, she goes in there, all right, everybody, listen up. I'm like, oh, Lord. And so she's like, Michael has something he needs to say. I'm like, I do? And I'm like, okay, so great. So I'm trying to nicely explain to the team, like, look, my plate is full. I'm trying to graduate. I have literally 2 months to make some magic happen. I'm taking 21 credits. I have this job as an RA. I had to quit my actual job because there wasn't enough hours in a day. I have an internship with the School of C. My grandmother, who is now all of a sudden one step from death, I got to deal with the stress of dealing with that. And there's just a lot on my plate right now. And I'm really trying my best to kind of give y'all everything I have, but I need y'all to meet me halfway there. And if there's like an issue where you guys don't like something, I need you to be vocal about it rather than go and spread it on social media and then just kind of because it kills the vibe of the progress that we're making. And on top of that, y'all are saying all this, but I gotta go and get the budgeting to make sure you guys all have uniforms and costumes. I still have to go and mix all of your music, and at this point ResFest is in like a few weeks and we're not even ready, and I'm sitting here trying to write out the different formations and do all of this, and half of y'all don't even come to practice on time. And so I said it extremely like nice and diplomatic when it was like, F all that. What he's saying is he don't give a who y'all think y'all are, cause at the end of the day, ain't none of y'all done ResFest before, let alone 3 times. All y'all know is high school assemblies. All y'all know is high school talent shows. All y'all know is basketball games from when you was in middle school. Raise your hand if you have a license to teach choreography in another state. I didn't think so. Y'all better be happy this man is standing here even taking time to even work with y'all. He got other stuff to do. He got real things he's trying to take care of. The stuff that y'all care about is some petty stuff. Half y'all haven't even declared your major yet. Like, I mean, she just went in on this team. Because mind you, this was like all freshmen. I was like, damn, Whitney. Jesus, like I felt bad. I was like, damn. Now, are there any questions? Didn't think so. Now tweet that. I was like, dang. Then the worst part, the main person who made the tweet wasn't even in the room. I was like, Lord, this whole team got cussed out and they don't even know what's going on. It was so bad. I mean, Whitney held me down that day, but man, I mean, she said everything I wanted to say, but just in a totally different manner. But yeah, so that team, whew, it was some work. It got better towards the very end. Like finally, when everything came together and I got the music mix and we finally had a routine that we agreed upon and everything was fine, we had a really, really great routine. Like it was going to be dope. And so it was finally time for the show. And man, I tell you, they got on that stage, they performed, and I was so underwhelmed. I was like, I know I didn't just waste all this time with them, and this is what they gave me. It was like they performed it like 65% because they one of the people on the team swore up and down that they were just Lorianne Gibson or Debbie Allen or the main choreographer from Alvin Ailey or something like that. And so right before they're performing, she's telling everybody, remember, conserve your energy. And I'm like, conserve your energy? Y'all only dancing for 3 minutes, because the rules at ResFest had changed. The year before, we danced for 4 minutes and 30 seconds straight. And on top of that, we had a smaller team. There were no substitutions where people could come off the floor and come back on. It was like you danced straight for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Hard as I don't know what, just kept going and kept going. This group only had to dance for 3 minutes, and their routine wasn't as high energy as the year before, but it was still a great routine. And I'm like, y'all don't need to conserve no energy. Y'all should be able to dance for 3 minutes. And so they do the performance, and I'm like, y'all gonna have to do better than this. And I mean, it wasn't bad, but based on what I had seen them do when they practiced, I'm like, y'all, what happened? I was so frustrated, and I told y'all before, that summer, I already had them chest issues. My chest started hurting as soon as they started performing. I'm like, you know what, I'm not gonna make it through this. I mean, and when they finished, they were all huffing and puffing, and one girl laid out on the side and she done cramped up. I'm like, y'all didn't do nothing. I was so pissed off. I was like, you know what, I'm not about to stay for the rest, because they still had the battles. Like, they made it to the next round, of course, because they still were good, but they weren't even close to the previous years. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And so they start the battle round, and they do that first battle routine, and I was like, nope, I'm not doing this, because I'm gonna end up in the hospital for real. And so I left. I'm like, I can't even do it. So I went home. I took my little aspirin and laid down. Like, I don't waste all my time with this BS. I could have been focusing on some other things. Like, this is so stupid. And then they ended up getting second place. I said, how? Okay, I guess. It was such an interesting outcome, because of the 4 groups that I've done for ResFest for all those years, they were the group that gave me the hardest time, and they were the group that, in my opinion, had the worst performance out of the other 4, but they got the best outcome and they got second place. And I was like, that's crazy. But really, during the battles is when I think it sunk in that, okay, this is serious, because they kind of half-assed the main routine. And so when they saw the battle rounds, you know, they blew one of the battle rounds. It wasn't that good. And then I didn't see the rest of this. They had to show me on camera, because I was already out. I was like, I'm checking out with y'all wasting my time. But when I saw the videos, I was like, okay, now they got it. Pretty much during the battles, that's when they just brought it. And I mean, folks was pulling out all kind of tricks and so I'm like, why the heck weren't y'all doing this during the main routine? But cool, it is what it is. So that group got second. It's interesting. I'm still friends with some of the people in that group. Some of them became lifelong friends, and there were like a few on that team that really got it in. But as a collective, I was just so disappointed. Like, y'all had me waste all this time, and y'all talking trash on Twitter and stuff, and this is what y'all did? Ooh. But, you know, interesting. And then there was the time Tanae lost the ring that her boyfriend gave her. You want to talk about some entertainment. So this was the same boyfriend from the karaoke extravaganza from the previous episode. And so they had been together for like a good year and some change. And he had bought her this ring and she lost it. And it was missing for like 2 or 3 weeks. And she was freaking out because at first she didn't even realize she lost it until about a week and a half after it had gone missing. And so he noticed that the ring was also missing, and she had told him that she was getting it cleaned or something, but she was starting to have a whole meltdown because she couldn't find it. And so I remember I was in her room and she done had this whole meltdown about to cry because she can't find the boyfriend's ring, and she's freaking out because eventually she's gonna have to tell him she lost it. And it's so funny because we're like 21, like y'all not getting married or nothing, but okay. And so I'm in her room. She's like, Michael, help me find my ring. I don't know what to do. And so she was in her bathroom, and I think she was doing her hair or some crap like that. And normally I used to always go to her room because she had 2 micro fridges. She had all the snacks. I mean, she had corn dogs, hot pockets, noodles, and Pop-Tarts and soda. And like, her family just used to give her everything. So if you were hungry, you didn't have no food, her room was the room to go to. You just eat all the snacks. And she had this kind of I can't explain what kind of chair it was, but it was this really comfortable chair. So I used to always be in her room eating the snacks in that chair watching TV. And so she was like, help me find the ring. And I'm like, okay, help me find the ring. If I was Tanae, what would I be doing? And so I really took that crap literally, and then I started pretending to be Tanae. And so I'm like, I started like mocking her voice and everything, and I'm like, I'm Tanae. If I had a ring, and at the time I used to roast Tanae because I told her she was too cocky. Because one time she had told her boyfriend that he was going to need to read more because she didn't want to be with somebody who didn't read or some crap like that. So I'm Tanae. I think I'm better than everybody else. All of my people need to know how to read, or they're not good enough for me. And then I kept mocking that time she had did the karaoke thing and hit that bad note, and I made it my ringtone. So I kept purposely walking around the room and hitting that same note that she missed at karaoke, and I'm I'm Tanae. I never work my night shift when I'm supposed to, and nothing happens. As a matter of fact, I I break all the rules as an RA, and the only person who gets in trouble is Michael. Ah! Like, I just kept going. And then I started roasting her from that time she did the pageant and said that thing about Sarah Palin working at Howard. And I think Sarah Palin should work at Howard University. She was gonna kill me, but it was so good and so funny, she couldn't even get mad. And I would not stop. I kept going. I'm gonna be a doctor. I'm a biology major, and I work the hardest on campus because my classes require me to actually do work. Unlike some people I know who are communications majors and all they gotta do is write speeches. Michael, when I tell you she got fried, that mess was so funny. And it was good though, because I mean, she was laughing. If she would have stopped laughing and got pissed, I would have stopped. But man, that crap was hilarious. And we didn't even find the ring. She ended up finding the ring like a few weeks later. It was in her coat pocket, one of her like outdoor coats. As for the karma that came, the funniest bit was literally the next week. I was in her room having a whole meltdown with my mom on the phone because my mom and I got in this big old giant argument in Tanae's room. Like, I'm on the phone with my mom and Tanae's in the bathroom again doing her hair. And me and my mom are just going at it because I'm really frustrated because it's starting to look real suspect that things are not really aligning the way that they're supposed to go when I graduate. If you heard the very first episode of the podcast, at this point in time, the plan was I was going to graduate because that was the main focus. Graduate, I was going to take a year to get, on my feet, and within that year, there were a few things that were going to happen. My aunt, who was a lawyer, was going to help me get like an assistant type job at the law firm over on 16th Street. And at the same time, she had some friends who were going to be in Europe for a year and a half and they needed somebody to house it. And so the friends were going to pay me to watch the house on top of the fact that I'd be working at the law firm, like doing some like assistant type work. And so I'm like, okay, 2 paychecks, great. And that'd help me get on my feet until I figure out if I'm going to grad school, if I'm going to do this New York thing and try to do A&R. And that was the plan, but it was starting to look extremely murky and questionable, and nobody was giving me clear answers, and I was freaking out because I'm like, there's only a few months left of school, this, that, and third, and my mom was saying, well, you can come home and do this, and I'm like, I don't want to come home because I know if I come home, I'm probably never gonna, we're having these big arguments, and I'm like, and so out of nowhere, the argument goes from that to, I wanted to let my mom know everything she had ever done wrong when I was a child, and I'm bringing up all these different instances, and you tried to make me record over my talent show because you didn't feel like driving to Walmart to get some new tapes so you could record my brother's football game, and so my stuff wasn't important, and you wanted to make it all about him, and this, that, and the third, and you never let me do this, and I could never call on you guys during college because y'all didn't want me to come to the school, and the main thing that y'all said is, don't call us when stuff goes wrong, and I held on to that, and I'm sitting here just going in and having this whole moment, and Tanae's like, oh yeah, he in there losing it, and so I'm in there just letting it all out, and so it's so funny when we look back, because she always mocks me and says, you sounded just like Monica from, what's the movie, Love and Basketball, when like, oh Monica, those games never mattered. It mattered, Mom. She's like, yeah, that was you. So we're now at the middle of April, and mind you, there's only about 3 weeks left of school, and we were getting ready for the resident assistant gala. They do a little ball for all of the people who are resident assistants, and they give out awards and stuff. That's how I got the RA of the year in the previous school year and everything like that. And so for some reason, all of us we were at the mall at the time because you had to dress up and put on some fancy clothes. So everybody had went to the mall and stuff and got their clothes and everything. And that day was funny because I had just got my stuff from where I was at, and Tanae and Whitney were in some other store, so I met up with them. And just know that Tanae got some really, really crappy deal or something. I don't even remember the logistics of what happened. I just know she was pissed off. And like I said before, her reactions to terrible things are always funny because she reminds me so much of Gina from Martin whenever something goes wrong. It's just the reactions are always hilarious. And so she's pissed off about whatever happened, and Whitney had got her dress, and so Whitney was explaining to me what Tanae was mad about. And so when I looked at Tanae, and Tanae looked at me like, don't even say nothing. And then of course, I get going, Whitney gets going, we're in there dying. And so I'm trying to be considerate because I'm like, okay, I gotta stop roasting my friend. She gonna really hate me one day. So I'm trying to be nice. And so the lady at the register is trying to ring up Tanae's overpriced dress or whatever she was pissed off that she got. And I was like, well, at least they gave you a bigger bag to put it in. And then the cashier was like, them bags the same size. I'm like, God dang. Listen, and that set me and Whitney off. We laughed even harder. And so Tanae walks out of the store, and after everything happens, me and Whitney are walking, and Tanae's like, the two of you don't even walk out of this store until y'all are done laughing. We're like, okay, we good. Yeah, we good today, we good. And so we would start walking, and as soon as we got to the door of the store, we just, oh! And so we'd have to run back and walk back into the store, laugh for like 5 minutes, sit on a little bench and everything, pat our back, get up, walk back. Tanae's just standing there looking at us like she wanted to really fight both of us. And then, of course, as soon as we got closer to that door, get like, funny day. But let me tell you, the karma was really getting me and Whitney that month, because the resident assistant gala, this is where they give the award for RA of the year, and we just knew, okay, this is Whitney's year. It's definitely going to Whitney. I couldn't get it because I already won. Tanae knew she wasn't getting it because she ain't never did no work. Nick knew he wasn't getting it because he was checked out. Theo did what Theo would do his Theo thing. Bobby didn't care like that. Andrew didn't care like that. AJ didn't care like that. Rochelle worked a little bit, but Rochelle was busy. Renee, if you remember her, that was the nice quiet girl with the vest from the last episode. She was impressed about it. And so we're like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to Whitney, because the other RAs in the mix, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely Whitney's thing. And so Boss Man goes out there and he has to do these awards. And now at this point in the school year, I think he hated all of us. I think he was over all of the RAs, and we were low-key over him too, but it was all, there was still love there, but it was just like, God, get me out of here, I can't wait. And so all the other directors of the other dorms are going and doing all these speeches as they give the awards. You know, this person went above and beyond, and they just did an excellent job. They were the face of this dorm, and this award goes to da-da-da-da-da. And this, all of that great stuff. Boss Man goes up there. I have the honor to give the award for my resident assistant of the year. This is the only person with whom I trust. And so we were looking like, I guess this is okay, Whitney, I guess. And so Whitney's getting ready to go up there and get her award. And he's like, I would like to give this to Quinn. And so Quinn was another resident assistant that was there that kind of was really low key. Like, she was the one that helped us when we got the fish in the previous episode. And Whitney was like, what? Huh? And Whitney had a knife in her hand at the same time because we were eating. When I tell you Whitney just dropped the whole knife, what? And you heard like the knife hit the plate. Who did you just say? Quinn? And it wasn't any bad blood, but Whitney was like, what? Because Whitney really did work hard that year. I mean, if there was anybody who worked that dorm, it was definitely her senior year. I mean, she knocked and she ran that front lobby. She definitely took the brunt of all the work with ResFest. She was the person in charge of doing lockout. So if some random resident got locked out of their room at 3 a.m, she was the person who's going to have to go and get it. Like, she put in so much work. So it threw everybody off that Whitney didn't get it. Nothing against Quinn, but we were like, huh? And then the way that Hobson awarded it, the only person whom I trust. We were like, what? Oh, okay. You don't trust anybody, huh? And then don't even get to when he had to give me and Tanae and Andrew our awards, because we were only 3 seniors. These ones, they helped with Snowmageddon, and this one, they did great work. Michael, Tanae, Andrew. I said, oh yeah, he ready for us to get out. Oh, okay. So that was an eventful gala where we recognized that our boss does not like us. At this point, there's literally maybe 2 weeks left to graduation, and I'm not even sure if I'm graduating. Not to say that I was failing. Like, the senior year, I did extremely well. Like, I really put in some work. And I mean, I was grinding. Because like I said, I was taking 8 classes, 21 credits. There weren't enough hours in a day to get everything in that I needed to get in. I had to make up for how I screwed up the first semester. And so, do that on top of pulling the weight for the second semester. And I did it somehow. I did great. Like, my grades were exceptionally well, thank God. Like, I made up for the 2 classes that I did terrible in, which meant that they would be taken off my transcript and the new grades would be on there. I was like, thank you, good. And so it kept me where my GPA was still, within my major, my GPA was a 3.8, but overall I only had like a 3.2 because I messed up so many times. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I just gotta make sure everything is well. And I was a little freaked out because I remembered that in the previous semester, when I thought I had some extra time, I didn't, and then I dropped the ball, and before you know it, that's how I failed the 2 classes, because there were some deadlines that weren't met. And so this time I made sure I met every deadline, and it wasn't even, I think we hadn't even got to finals or anything yet, but with seniors, they don't really give you a whole lot as far as finals, because they're like, just get y'all on out of here, y'all done did enough for 16 or 8 different semesters, so just get out. And so I did everything, and the last thing is you would go to your actual school, to your counselor, and they would give you this pink slip. If you got the pink slip, that meant you did it. You were out. If you didn't get the pink slip, You need to go back to one of them professors, plead your case, call on Virgin Mary or Mother Mary to come and help you out, or whatever you need to do, and talk to God, talk to Allah, talk to Buddha, talk to somebody to make magic happen, and pray that somehow they can do whatever they need to do so you can get out of there on time. Because Howard did not play about credits and everything like that. I think at the time, you couldn't walk even if you were short by like 1 credit. Like, it was like, nope, they were not playing. I think they've loosened up now, but back then it was like no ifs, ands, or buts. And for me, I was like, I got my family flying in all the way from Washington State. I better be graduating. And mind you, I hadn't done anything wrong. It was just, I had psyched myself out thinking that, okay, I hope I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, even today, I still have the dream where, you know, it's like a dream where you miss an assignment or something and now you can't graduate, or you didn't. Oh, I have that dream, or I have the dream where I was supposed to be in a class and I forgot about the class and stopped going to it, and then it's the end of the semester and I failed the class because I forgot it existed. Or I forget that there was a class I was supposed to take and I never signed up for the class and I never graduated. Like, I still have that dream today. So just imagine where I was at that time when, okay, here's an internship, because I had to get the internship, everything all, you know, the practicum all locked in and everything, so I could get the credit for the internship and everything like that. You know, had to get the graduation stuff together, had to figure out what the move was. I still was not 100% sure of what was going down after graduation, because it was still a gray area. Apparently I had a job waiting for me, but I wasn't sure, and the economy crashed, and it was a lot going on. So I was really, you know, I psyched myself out, and I was thinking, I'm not even gonna graduate. But I got there. They gave me that pink slip. I was like, yes, I did it. Okay, I can breathe. And so after that, there was one last major event before graduation, and that was Bison Ball. And Bison Ball was just a great way to escape and just really live that last great moment with your class, where everybody gets to dress up and you go to this nice venue and the music is good and there's the alumni and this, that, and the third, and it's just a great night. So of course we're all dressed up and jazzy, and this was a great way for me to actually hang out with the class of 2010. Because I spent so much time in Meridian as a resident assistant, I was always with the class of 2011 and the class of 2012 and the class of 2013. And so sometimes I got lost in the shuffle with my own class because I was never around them as much as I would like to be. But this was like a great way to kind of just, you know, rub elbows with some folks before you get your last goodbyes, because this was going to be one of the last moments we would all be in the same room. And so, I mean, it was a great night. Music was jamming, everything like that. And then the part that made it sad though, like as the night was winding down, then tears start coming with a bunch of folks. You start seeing people just crying all over. Some girl on this side is crying about this, and there's another group of folks over here crying, and this person's hugging that person, and because it's sinking in like, okay, the best 4 years of your life that you've just had are almost over. And so you can try to make this moment count, but this moment's almost over as well. And so, I mean, it started sinking in like, man, this is about to be it. Like, yo, we're about to be out of here. And we're all about to branch out and go to different parts of the world and start different journeys. And so it was starting to sink in. It was getting real. And I mean, it just led to the actual day of graduation. Then came the morning of May 8th, 2010. And so the day before was actually the School of Communications graduation ceremony, because that's the school that I actually was a part of. And in those situations, because Howard is such a large school, the individual schools have their own private graduation ceremonies, and that's the one where you walk across the stage and the people clap and everything like that. And then the next day is the larger commencement, where it's all of the schools together, and rather than you individually walking across the stage, you and your entire class for that school stand up, sit down, and then go to the next school. The only people who walk across the stage at commencement are the people who are receiving their doctorate, which is always fun to watch because there's so many who get it. That's one magical thing to watch, is when you watch all of these black folks walk across the stage and get PhDs and doctorates. Like, it's the most amazing thing to witness. I still remember ironing my cap and gown before leaving out, and while I was ironing everything, I was like, yo, this is crazy. Like, this is almost over. Like, I just got here and it seems like it's time to go already. And as I was ironing my cap and gown, I was just reflecting and thinking back on everything that had gone down in those 4 years. And I'm like, man, time really flies, and this was such a great experience. And so, you know, I ironed everything, and now it's time to get to campus. And I could take the shuttle to campus, but I don't want to take the shuttle to campus because I don't trust the shuttle. I just want everything to go perfectly. And so I decided I'm just gonna walk to campus because I've done it before. I did it that whole summer. And so, I'm all dressed up. I have my cap and gown. And when I tell you this walk was like a walk of just victory and championship and just overall accomplishment, because the coolest thing is, and this is when I tell you, I still sometimes I miss old DC because the city's changed so much, but as I was walking, because I walked down Euclid all the way to Georgia Avenue until I got to campus, every person who saw me on the sidewalk, you just hear, "I'm real proud of you, brother. You go, boy. That's right, baby. You do that. I am so proud. Good for you. Amen. Let me pray with you for a quick second." Like every random black person that was sitting on their porch in the neighborhood or watering the grass or whatever they were doing, I mean, they just congratulated you. Like graduation or commencement at Howard University in the area where it takes place, the entire area is affected by it. Like you just feel a certain charm in that entire region when it's commencement. And mind you, they also show the commencement on TV, but something about that neighborhood being so supportive, and it made me flash back and think to one of the stories that one of the local residents had told me my freshman year about how when there were the riots in '68 after King died, a lot of the city burned, like a lot of DC burned. Only a few establishments were even left on, like a place like U Street. That was Ben's Chili Bowl, that was the flower shop, and that was that bank. I think it's United First Bank. And so one of the additional moments was there were some people who initially tried to come and start trying to burn stuff up at Howard as well, but it was the residents of the neighborhood who stood and were like, "Nope, y'all not gonna do this. This is a treasure. This is the treasure that's keeping our babies together." And so it just made me think of that and think of the fact that, there's such a communal aspect to the experience of Howard University. It's more than just being the college student on the campus. It's also about the community in which you're in. It's also about the community that indirectly supports you and you don't even know it, as far as the people living around the area. And it made me think of everybody that I had met before, working at the Kingman Boys and Girls Club and getting introduced to a bunch of family members on my dad's side that I didn't even know existed until I got to Howard. And just all of that. I mean, it was such a grand walk. And because I knew it would be one of the last times I'd be making this walk, I just felt so empowered. I just felt like you did this, because I didn't really have the best academic experience at Howard as far as me accomplishing things, because I got humbled. I had to learn things the hard way. There were lots of stumbles and slips and falls and everything like that. And so now it's like, after all of that, after having to do summer session and after accidentally fell in 2 classes over some crazy nonsense that you should have known better about, and after having to go to the hospital after a few things, and after that first week when you got there and you went to the wrong building thinking it was your dorm, and then your dad cussed out everybody in the building telling you to go pick any room you want and he'll be up there in a second. Now look where we're at. We're literally about to walk and get a degree from Howard University, a school that I didn't even know existed until I was a junior in high school, a school that I wasn't even sure I'd be able to get into, and a school that once I got into it, I wasn't even sure if my parents would be able to afford it, or I wasn't even sure if I would even be able to go. And so now it's like, here we are. And so I make it to campus. I'm feeling all empowered. I'm seeing just a wave of blue. Everybody's in the cap and gowns, and everybody has all the different corps and the medallions and the this and the that, and it's just a magical moment. And so we're lining up with our different schools and with our classes and everything, and you start marching into the yard, because Howard does their graduation ceremony on the actual yard, which is, I love that they do that. A lot of larger schools go and they'll do it in like an arena or something, but no, Howard still does it on the campus. And so we're lining up, we start marching to the yard, and I hear the band start to play. And as the band starts to play, it's also raining. Like, it's just some light sprinkles that are starting to come down, and the band starts to play. And as I start walking, I just start tearing up. Like, yo, this is crazy. Like, I just felt so, I can't explain it. Just like, I've always been somebody who feels that I can pretty much do anything that I put my mind to. Like, there's nothing you can tell me that I can't do. I'll figure out how to do it. I think that's why I'm always jumping and dipping and dabbing in all kind of projects. Like, one day I'm doing a web series, the next day I'm doing an album, the next day I'm doing comedy, the next day I'm doing YouTube, the next day I'm doing a podcast, the next day I'm teaching dance, the next day I'm building this, like, it's all kind of different things. But, at the same time, sometimes I was not always confident, and sometimes I was not always in a space where I believed I could do something. Even though I know I could do it, I was always afraid. I was always terrified of stepping out of something where I didn't have full control of the situation. And Howard was an experience where I had to release all control, because it was, I mean, I could control how I responded to things, or I could control how I would approach things, but I didn't have control of what was ahead of me. And so getting into that space of being vulnerable, and so I started thinking of the different relationships I had been in, and the friendships and the friends that I made. Like, I met some really, really great people. Everything from my roommate from freshman year to, of course, all the RA friends that I had, to many of the friends that I made in my School of C programs. And I started thinking about all the lessons that I had in some of the classes, and some of the moments that were extremely powerful. And I started thinking of all the moments where, I got to participate in things, being at the ceremonial groundbreaking for the Martin Luther King Memorial, and not only being at the ceremonial groundbreaking, but being a part of the team for the event, as far as the event planning and with the project management team, something that I had no idea I would even get to do. And I'm like, okay, that's a piece of history that, you played a part in, and just doing all of the different things, and going and marching for the Gen 6 when that happened, and just continuing to just really connect and meet so many people and understand the inner workings of the diaspora, and understanding that, the initial worldview of what blackness is not what's been taught to you, and how you're going to have to step outside of the box, and how you have to read, and how you have to decipher things and decode things, and really dig into the aspect of what is when trying to understand who you are as a black man in this country, navigating on this soil. And so as I'm walking, that band got to playing, and that tear that fell was like just a tear of like, I did it. And mind you, remember I told you I had never really been an emotional person. I don't remember the last time I had shed a tear before that moment. It had been years. I didn't cry when I graduated from high school and moved away, but to come to college, I didn't cry with that. Like, I probably hadn't cried since I was at least 12 or 13. And so, it just hit me. And then it hit me too much, because I started really crying. I'm like, no, hold it together. And I'm trying to walk, and the band's playing, and I'm like, I was like, what is going on? Because it just hit me like, yo, this is it. And so as I walked and I got to my seat, I couldn't even find my family until almost the end of the ceremony. But I got in there, I was just done. Like, tears were just flowing. And I might have been the only person alert, because everybody else in my class had went to the Love nightclub the night before. Everybody was hung over. Everybody was twisted. Me, I was sober because I didn't go out the night before. And the funniest part is, right before we had gotten to the procession to get to our seats, out of nowhere, I see Tanae running in her flip-flops, holding on to her cap, trying to get with her school. I'm like, what happened? Which, fast forward to after the graduation, she cussed me out. Apparently, I was supposed to call her and wake her up and tell her that we had to go. I swear, I don't remember that at all. But she says, and she is insistent that I was supposed to call her and wake her up, and apparently I didn't, so she almost missed graduation. But I swear I wouldn't have done that. I'm not that terrible. So that was another thing to laugh at. But anyway, so I make it to my seat, and then the rain finally stops, and the commencement, it's just this great experience. That year, they were giving an honorary degree to Robin Roberts and Judge Sotomayor, which was kind of interesting because my aunt was on the committee that approved for, her to even go before Congress to be voted on and everything like that. And so it was just crazy how everything connected. And then finally, I found where my parents were, and they were literally sitting to the left of me. Like, I could see them, and they were maybe 10 people away, as far as, like, there were 10 people sitting next to me, and then over there was the whole section where my family was sitting. And to see the look of just pride, especially my father's face, like, my father, it was almost kind of creepy. He was just staring at me, but it was like a stare of like, wow, that's my boy. He did, okay, I'm proud of him. And then, of course, my aunt is crying, and my mom was crying, and it was such a great moment. Now, the one thing, I can't remember who did our commencement speech. I honestly can't remember, and it pisses me off because all the other classes had all kind of great, they've had Oprah, they had Barack Obama, they had P. Diddy, they had Chadwick Boseman, they've had all these people, and I honestly, for the life of me, cannot remember who did my commencement. I just know it was some congressman from Tennessee that none of us had heard of. But the speech was cool. I guess I just honestly can't remember. But that graduation, like, it sealed the deal on that chapter. And when I tell you, Howard was one experience that I will never forget, which is why I really enjoyed doing this podcast on, my Howard experience. It really was a way for me to kind of open back up and relive these moments, and also document it and kind of do like a historian thing so that I can never forget these moments. So even when I'm like 75 and my memory starts going crazy, I can listen to this and, it'll still be there. But Howard was it was such an experience. And some people ask, like, would you do it again? And I'm like, of course, I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I know Howard's changed a bit, some for the better, some for the worse. But, again, it was an experience that I don't know what kind of person I would be had I not lived through those 4 years. I don't know what my social life would look like. I don't know what I'd be doing. It's also probably highly unlikely that I'd have a YouTube channel and 2 albums, or at least the second album's almost here, and a podcast, and had done a web series. And I don't know if I would have had, the #1 community center in the country for 2 years in a row. I don't know if any of that would have happened without going to a place like Howard. And even though my Howard experience as far as the academic process was not smooth sailing, I'm so glad that I struggled in those moments, because they pretty much set up a space where now I'm prepared for anything. Like, there's nothing that can shake me. Even at my job, there has never been a moment that was too stressful or could even compare to some of the stuff that happened when I went to Howard. Like when there's chaos or where there's something that's really bad that happens, I'm like, oh, okay, we can handle this, because back when I was in college, let me tell you about how we had to deal with this. And so those are the things I appreciate. Those are the things that sit with me forever. I could literally talk another 30-40 minutes just about why I appreciate going to the school, but I don't want to talk your ears off, because this podcast is already about an hour and 30 minutes already. But Howard was it was an experience. And of course, if you follow the podcast, I'm giving you this great, great, happy ending. But if you listen to the very first episode of the podcast, that's when life changed. So Howard was like that last experience where everything was smooth sailing, and then life happened. But I'm so glad that I had that Howard foundation to kind of get me in a position to be prepared for what was going to happen in the future. Because there's been a lot of bad, there's also been some really great things that happen as well, but there's been a whole bunch of downsides that came first that I had to deal with. And so Howard helped me prepare for that. And so I guess my advice to anybody, especially when it comes to HBCUs, because some people, there are the debates about where you should go to school. My advice is go to school where go where it fits you. Go where, you feel that you'll be your best self. For me, it was an HBCU. And of the HBCUs, for me, it was Howard. Because I also got into Morehouse, but I chose to go to Howard. And honestly, I think had I gone to Morehouse, I probably would have had just as great of an experience. It would have been different, but I think I would have had a similar experience. But, for me, it was Howard. And so I say for people who are questioning whether or not they should attend an HBCU or whatever it is that they want to do, it's kind of like you just have to take a chance and go for it, because you don't know what you're going to get. In my head, when I first got in Howard, I was thinking, Felicia Rashad will be there every day, and, Diddy's going to be coming out and partying, and I'm going to have a record deal, and I'll meet my wife, and we'll be married by the time I'm a senior, and ain't none of that happened. But, I'm glad that didn't happen, because the realities that came kind of eclipsed my expectations and gave a better outcome. You know what I mean? And so I have no complaints about Howard. Even the worst days, I appreciate. The laughs, the everything, and the lifelong friends like, Tana Mae, Tanae, that's my road dog. Same thing with Whitney, Nick, we still keep up, and some of the other people I went to school with, because there's a lot of people I didn't name in this podcast. I just kind of stuck with the main few that would be the, most prominent, I guess, figures in the podcast. But I mean, I'm grateful for that, because I can't imagine what would I be doing today without the same circle of friends. That's the cool thing. Even after all of these years, we're all still tight. And so, anyway, that's my podcast. Until next time.